our next episode of Book Talk. And our question posed, today we'll be talking about F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. I forgot what the title was for a second there. And our question is this the great American novel? Why don't you start?
That's a tough one to answer, and I think just even that term, I don't know if you can have the great American novel anymore. What does that mean? What does it need to be? Obviously it needs to be a great novel, so The Great Gatsby, check. It's got great in its title.
It's about America, check.
Check. Okay, so
it's
it has
a novel,
to be great.
check.
It's written by an American about America, so as far as that goes, but is that the same thing as being the great American novel? I think the great American novel has to somehow encapsulate what America is.
Right. Or at least discuss what America is, if not encapsulate. I mean, it doesn't have to be a good look at America. It could be a critique.
Yeah.
Somehow it has to last the test of time, too, because, I mean, a lot of people have said, Huck Finn is the great American novel, and that's clearly limited by time and space, and you know what I mean, as to when it was written, doesn't reflect the America that we live in right now. Is that the great American novel? So I don't know. It is a problematic question, but what the heck? Let's just go for it. So what do you think? Would you say this is the great American? I mean.
Well, I think to address that, maybe go back to Huck Finn a little bit.
Okay.
And you said it can be a critique of America, and what I talked about kind of encapsulates America. I think that addresses this kind of the problem of race in America. That's what it's known for. That's what it really does through Jim and Huck, and Huck's kind of moral crisis in dealing with Jim as a human being. I'm not sure he ever actually completely does that.
No.
This, I think, would be kind of the great look at and critique of the American dream.
Right.
Of the idea that you can become anything in America.
Right.
That someone poor like Gatsby can create himself almost out of nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's, so I think in terms of that for it to be a great American novel, it has to be something essential about what it means to be an American.
Right.
I think it does address that as well.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the best novels looking at the complexities and problems of the great American dream.
Yeah, I would say that for me, I would vote for this as the great American novel than Huck Finn. That just could be because I have such problems with Huck Finn. I think it's flawed. The whole last third of that book is a train wreck, in my opinion. So, and that erodes any artistic value that book would have. Whereas this one just continues to get stronger throughout the entire book. And I think that the American dream is such a huge element of what it means to be an American and what our country is all about. And this is a book that overtly addresses that, celebrates it in some places, critiques it in other places. It's a big mess, as oftentimes the American dream is. And so for me, it's very successful that way. I mean, in some ways, if we're going to have like the American dream book be about race, I think Toni Morrison does a way better job of that in, say, something like Song of Solomon than Huck Finn does. So I don't know. For me, yes, because I think this idea of defining what the American dream is more key to America. And this book is so just quintessentially American. Well, Huck Finn is too, I guess. But this, it just so is. This, like, even though it's like set in this very specific time and place.
This couldn't be about England.
Oh my goodness, no, or France or anywhere else. It's,
Yes.
it's so thoroughly American, and I don't know, I would say yes.
When you bring up Morrison, too, I think a thing that brings up is how, again, the problem of calling it a great American novel, because this is such a limited view of America.
Right.
It's all, obviously, it's all like, there's almost all white characters.
Right.
They're from a very distinct economic class. In some ways, it's like calling Pride and Prejudice the great British novel,
right.
when it is such a narrow
Right,
slice
yeah.
of Britain and just
you do get some
ignores the
pork. I mean, you get like the
existence.
Wilsons in here, so there are a few people
Mhm.
on the
Yes,
fringes.
true.
But yeah, the great majority of it, we're looking at
Mhm.
one. But I mean, what are you going to do? Have one that's you know, I'm trying to think.
This
Americans
huge-
don't seem to write
yeah.
these big, huge, sprawling Dickensian things unless they're, you know, like Infinite Jest. They're like something 21st century and like super postmodern. We just don't have those
Yeah,
as much.
yeah.
I can't think of one that like spans generations, and yet you see all of America
Oh my-
coming and going.
Well, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on Mice and Men.
Steinbeck?
Steinbeck
Oh, yes,
does that.
East of Eden.
Steinbeck definitely does it with
Yes.
East of Eden.
Yeah,
You want to talk
Steinbeck,
about
the
a
better
great,
American
you know,
novel.
kind of problematic critique of the American dream and all. Then you have Grapes of Wrath.
Right.
So
Well, I think that even the question of the great American
Yeah,
novel,
exactly, yeah.
rather than
It's
a great,
great
American,
American
novel.
novel.
I don't know if other
Yeah.
countries other than us keep trying to find one text that somehow is going to
Yeah.
symbolize the
And-
entirety of our culture throughout time. And
maybe that's because America
'Cause we're
is
newer?
we're so new and we're so spread out. We're so many different things. Maybe that's kind of American in itself, is trying to find a core to ourselves.
Yeah.
The British are just the British. The French are just the French.
Right.
You know, but the Americans, what does that even mean? Who are we? And I think
Yeah.
literature is one of the ways that we've, from the very beginning, sought to define
Well,
ourselves.
true, and I would say that the whole concept of the great American novel is coming out of the 19th century. I mean, people were talking about it at Huck Finn at the time Huck Finn was being
Yes.
written, and that was when we were closer to our sense. I mean, it's really the 19th century where America even has a sense of its own literature. It's not this warned over, quasi awful retread of British stuff. And I don't think it matters as much maybe now, 150 years down the pipeline, as
True,
it did in
yeah.
the mid 19th century, where we had to have a sense of ourselves and one novel was going to break free from Europe. And now it's like, yeah, whatever. I mean, we could
Yeah.
just kind of, we're churning out such good art now that we don't see ourselves as much in comparison to Europe as we did 150 years ago. So
True.
maybe, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of people, no, you still hear the Great American
still
novel.
hear it,
I mean,
yeah,
Jonathan
definitely.
Francis, The Corrections, when that came out, that was like the Great American novel.
Mhm.
No good. Don't read it. It's
Yeah.
crap. But anyway, it was still some good stuff too. But wasn't that great?
Yeah.
Oh.
We had to take a brief cut there because our dog wandered into the room and started nosing the camera. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of voice.
Yeah.
And we talked about this some, that as great as F. Scott Fitzgerald is, I love the prose there. As great as that is, the idea that Huck Finn captured the American voice in such a way, that I think that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons it was the first one to
Well,
be
a
considered.
distinct American voice.
Yes.
You're right. You don't
Yeah,
have
it's not
that as
the only
much.
American voice.
Yeah.
Our
Judy
dog,
says.
our dog just crashed the
She
party.
shall not
kid.
be denied.
Okay.
sit here.
Yeah.
Well, I will give you that Huck Finn definitely has very distinct American voices in a way that this one doesn't as
Yes.
much. You know what I mean? But these could.
Yeah, I don't want Tom to be a
No.
great American
Oh,
voice.
good
He's
grief,
awful.
no. Yeah, or
Um,
Gatsby or Nick,
mhm,
you know?
yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe it is Gatsby, though. Someone like attempting to be more, sophisticated than he actually is,
Mhm.
hiding a sense of, feeling underqualified. I don't know. Maybe that's like but again, that's like that comparison to Europe thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know if you would have novels like that now, 100 years after Gatsby. I don't think it's as much of a concern.
Yeah,
I
think you're
really
right.
don't.
Yeah.
And maybe that has to do with the primacy of movies, as the basically is the narrative's tale of the 20th and 21st century. People don't read. So many people don't read books. Everyone goes to see movies, and America dominates in that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's it.
I think it's more what you were saying earlier, that we had more of maybe a need for that in the 19th
Right.
century, when we were still a newer country,
Yeah.
when we were still taking our lead from other countries, and now is like this global superpower.
Right.
We don't. I think we're not as desperate to find
Yeah.
the definition of America, and I think on the other side we're much more suspicious of there being a single definition
I think so too.
of what an American is.
I mean, I would say some great American novels. I would put this. I would put East of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
I would put Toni Morrison's Song of
Yeah.
Solomon.
Or Bluest Eye.
Yeah, but I would put like, yeah, but then it becomes taste
Yeah,
at that
exactly,
point.
yeah.
Which is why I can acknowledge Huck Finn's greatness, but I wouldn't put it up there as a great American novel. I think just for my own taste.
So, The Great Gatsby,
A great
American
American
novel.
novel.